What if everything you believed about a family, a legacy, and a farm built over decades was a lie? For years, little people, Big World showed a story of perseverance, unity, and family values. A father building something for his children, a mother protecting her legacy, a farm meant to last for generations. But tonight, we look at what the cameras never showed. A secret audio recording, a quiet transfer of ownership, and a family empire collapsing overnight. What started as a private betrayal turned into a legal nightmare involving embezzlement, tax evasion, and a shocking courtroom verdict. Was this about love, power, or control? Once the truth came out, nothing could undo it. Roloff Farms was never just land. For decades, it symbolized resilience, family pride, and a dream built from nothing. Before TV crews arrived, the farm was meant to be a promise, a future that could survive arguments, divorces, and fame. At the center were Matt and Amy Roloff. Together, they turned rough land into a thriving destination. Pumpkin season became a tradition, the farm became a brand, and the Roloff name became inseparable from it. But behind the smiles, cracks were forming. When Matt and Amy divorced, the farm became more than property. It became a battlefield. Ownership discussions grew tense. Promises were made quietly. Expectations were never written down. Amy believed the farm would always stay in the family. Her children believed it too. Zach especially saw the land as more than business. It was home, identity, and legacy. Slowly, decisions started happening behind closed doors. Matt took control of operations. Financial management shifted. Contracts changed. Power concentrated in fewer hands. Then came Caryn Chandler. At first, she was simply involved in the business, trusted and present. Over time, her role quietly expanded. Amy didn't realize a bigger plan was unfolding. While the family focused on emotional ownership, legal ownership was already being rewritten. By the time anyone noticed, the legacy they thought was safe was slipping away. Long before the secret recording surfaced, the Roloff family was fragile. On the surface, everything seemed normal. The show continued. Social media posts smiled back at fans. Holidays were shared. Public statements stayed polite. But behind the scenes, communication was breaking down slowly and painfully. The divorce had changed more than the marriage. It changed decision-making. Trust had to be negotiated and often wasn't. Amy struggled to let go of the farm, not for money, but because of meaning. Every building held memories. Every corner held her life's work. She believed the farm would remain a shared family asset, something her children could rely on. Matt saw the farm differently. To him, it was no longer just a legacy. It was a business that needed efficiency, control, and planning. As disagreements grew, he became more guarded and determined to operate on his own terms. Zach and Jeremy tried to discuss their future roles. Conversations turned tense. Offers were made and withdrawn. Meetings ended without clarity. Zach felt pushed away. The hardest part wasn't rejection, it was silence. Decisions happened without explanation. Information arrived late, or not at all. Slowly, the idea that the farm would pass naturally to the next generation faded. Meanwhile, Caryn's presence grew. She attended meetings, handled finances, and spoke on Matt's behalf. Important conversations happened only when she was present, or not at all. Amy felt a distance she couldn't cross. Every question was met with vague reassurances. Every concern was brushed aside as business, but business and family were never separate at Roloff Farms. When Amy officially stepped away from her portion of the property, something felt wrong. Paperwork seemed rushed, language unclear, the future uncertain. No one realized ownership lines were already being redrawn. Trust was being quietly replaced with strategy. Proof of it already existed, waiting, unheard, about to change everything. Then it arrived. A single audio file attached to a short anonymous message. "You deserve to hear this." Amy hesitated. Years of tension had already exhausted her. But the message felt different, heavier, final. She pressed play. What followed wasn't speculation or rumor. It was a conversation, clear voices, familiar tones, calm, methodical, strategic. Matt and Caryn spoke freely, believing no one else was listening. They discussed ownership transfers, not hypothetically, but as if they were already done. Caryn spoke about paperwork, restructuring, and how everything would be cleaner once finalized. Then Matt said something that froze Amy. Full ownership of Roloff Farms had already been transferred. Not to his children, not to a trust, but to Caryn. The conversation grew darker. They talked about moving funds, timing transactions around taxes, avoiding attention. It sounded casual, but Amy knew it wasn't normal. This wasn't just betrayal, it could be illegal. She replayed the recording again and again. Every time, the meaning became clearer. The farm she believed was protected for her children had been quietly taken out of reach. Amy contacted Zach. He listened silently. After a long pause, he said, "This changes everything." Within days, the audio spread beyond the family. Legal advisors were consulted, and financial experts analyzed the recording. One conclusion kept coming up. If the recording was real, as all signs suggested, then Matt and Caryn hadn't just crossed an emotional line. They may have crossed a legal one. Once that possibility existed, there was no controlling what would happen next. Secrets can survive families, but they rarely survive evidence. The more Amy listened, the clearer one truth became. This wasn't sudden. It wasn't panic or improvisation. It was careful, familiar, and planned over months, maybe years. That realization cut deeper than the words themselves. For decades, viewers of Little People, Big World thought they were watching a family face challenges honestly. But away from cameras, a different story unfolded. One shaped by private meetings, whispered agreements, and carefully timed paperwork. Amy began retracing moments she had once ignored. Meetings she wasn't invited to, decisions explained only after the fact, financial updates that felt vague, incomplete, or rushed. At the center of it all was Matt Roloff, more distant than ever, protective of information, and increasingly reliant on one person he trusted completely, Caryn Chandler. What once looked like professionalism now felt calculated. Caryn had access to internal records, handled contracts, coordinated with accountants and lawyers, and slowly became the gatekeeper, deciding what the family saw and what they didn't. Amy realized she hadn't been excluded by accident. When she confronted Matt privately, he didn't deny it. He deflected, talking about efficiency, protecting the farm's future and necessary business decisions, but never explained why his children were left out. Zach's role had already been reduced to appearances and seasonal involvement. He had sensed the shift long before the recording, but now he understood its purpose. This wasn't just about ownership. It was about control. By quietly consolidating authority, Matt and Caryn removed obstacles. Family discussions didn't matter when legal documents spoke louder. Emotional claims counted for nothing against signed transfers and restructured accounts. The most painful part was that everyone who trusted the legacy had unknowingly helped protect the secrecy. Betrayal often grows quietly behind closed doors until the damage is irreversible. By the time the truth came out, the plan was complete. The recording wasn't meant to leave the family at first. Amy initially wanted to protect her children from public scrutiny. She knew how quickly rumors could spiral and destroy reputations. But as advisors listened, it became clear this was no longer just family drama. It was a legal matter. One consultant said plainly, "If this becomes public, authorities will have no choice but to investigate." That moment changed everything. Word started to spread quietly. Industry insiders, business associates, and accountants began asking questions that had never been asked before. Why had ownership changed so suddenly? Why were certain records inaccessible? Why did signatures not match timelines? Then the audio surfaced online. No announcement, no explanation, just the recording, raw and clear. The reaction was immediate. Fans who followed the family for years felt blindsided. Support fractured. Some refused to believe it. Others felt betrayed, not just as viewers, but as witnesses to a story they thought they understood. Local media picked it up. Headlines questioned the legality of the farm's ownership. Experts discussed the implications of transferring assets without disclosure. Financial analysts flagged potential violations. Something unexpected happened. People who had stayed silent began to talk. Former employees hinted at irregular payments. Contractors recalled unusual practices. Small details formed a pattern that was hard to ignore. The pressure became impossible to contain. Matt and Caryn released a brief statement calling the allegations misleading, but offered no specifics, no denials, no documents to counter the claims. Silence spoke louder than words. Authorities had already started preliminary inquiries. Financial records were requested, property filings reviewed, and tax documents flagged. What began as a private betrayal became a public reckoning. For the first time, the farm wasn't a symbol of family, it was a potential crime scene. Once the recording went public, there was no neutral ground left. Inside the family, silence turned into confrontation, and confrontation became separation. Phone calls stopped. Messages went unanswered. Gatherings were canceled. Unresolved tension hardened into clear sides. Amy made her position known quietly, but firmly. This was no longer about personal hurt. It was about accountability and protecting what she believed was meant for the next generation. She refused public arguments, but behind the scenes, she prepared for something far more serious. Zach stood with her. For him, the betrayal felt personal. The farm wasn't just an asset. It was where family traditions happened and where he imagined a future that now seemed deliberately erased. Jeremy stayed distant, silent, absent, not defensive. Some saw loyalty, others saw uncertainty. Neutrality was no longer possible. The unity viewers once believed in no longer existed. Matt withdrew further, limiting communication to legal representatives. Family discussions were replaced by formal emails, every word rehearsed, as if in court. Caryn remained invisible. No public statements, no explanations, no attempts to repair relationships. Her silence felt calculated, like waiting was part of the strategy. The emotional toll grew. Amy struggled with the weight of exposing a truth she never wanted to uncover. Anger, grief, and disbelief collided. Extended family members had to choose sides, knowing neutrality felt like betrayal. The hardest truth: this wasn't temporary. No family meeting or apology could fix it. Once communication happens through lawyers, it's no longer about reconciliation, it's about consequences. The decision to take legal action didn't come quickly. For Amy, it was the last line she wanted to cross. Lawsuits don't just challenge actions, they rewrite relationships forever. But advisors reviewing the evidence came to one unavoidable conclusion. Doing nothing meant accepting everything. That was no longer an option. With Zach at her side, Amy authorized her legal team to move forward. The filing was precise, controlled, unemotional. It outlined allegations far beyond family disagreement: unauthorized asset transfers, misrepresentation of ownership, breach of fiduciary duty, and financial misconduct tied to the farm's operations. Once the lawsuit was filed, the world began to see the full scope of what had happened at Roloff Farms. What had looked like a family disagreement was revealed to be a carefully orchestrated plan. Legal filings detailed the steps Matt and Caryn had taken: transferring ownership without consent, moving funds, and restructuring accounts in ways that limited the family's access. Each page of the court documents made it clear how meticulously the plan had been executed, and how little regard had been given to the family's understanding or legacy. Amy and Zach knew the process would be long and grueling. Lawsuits are not just legal battles, they are emotional marathons. Every court date, every filing, and every hearing meant revisiting the betrayal. But they were determined. For Amy, this was about more than property or money. It was about ensuring that the legacy her family had built was respected, and that her children would see that trust and honesty mattered, even when others had chosen deception. The first hearings were tense. Lawyers presented evidence, including the recording that had started it all, along with financial records and documents showing changes in ownership. Matt's legal team argued efficiency, business management, and legal technicalities. They painted a picture of necessary decisions made for the good of the farm. But the audio recording, along with timelines of transfers and bank records, spoke louder than words. Media coverage exploded. Fans and the general public followed every update, analyzing every twist. Social media divided opinions even further. Some still defended Matt, arguing that business decisions are separate from family loyalty. Others saw the betrayal clearly and rallied behind Amy and Zach. Local newspapers ran detailed reports, and financial analysts commented on the unusual ways farm assets had been moved. The story grew from family drama to a cautionary tale about trust, control, and the consequences of secrecy. Inside the family, the conflict continued to strain relationships. Amy and Zach communicated constantly, coordinating with lawyers, gathering documents, and making decisions about the farm's future. Jeremy remained mostly on the sidelines, attending court dates but offering little public input. Some family members quietly expressed support, while others withdrew entirely, unwilling to confront the magnitude of what had happened. It became clear that this wasn't just a disagreement, it had changed the family forever. Court proceedings revealed even more complexities. Experts were called to testify about financial transfers, tax implications, and the legality of ownership changes. Questions about intent, timing, and knowledge became central. Lawyers on both sides presented scenarios that showed the level of planning that had gone into the transfers. Every piece of evidence reinforced a single truth. The farm had been systematically removed from the family's control, and the effects would last for generations if nothing was done. Despite the tension, Amy remained focused. She did not seek revenge, she sought accountability. Each step of the lawsuit was measured and strategic. She wanted to protect her children and secure the farm's future in a way that honored the legacy her family had built from scratch. Zach shared this determination, often acting as a sounding board for strategies, attending meetings with advisors, and helping track the legal and financial details. Together, they were determined to ensure that betrayal did not define the family story. Meanwhile, Matt's approach changed as the case progressed. He grew more private and guarded. Statements became formal and tightly worded. Communication with family dwindled further. The personality that viewers had seen for years, the open, sometimes playful father, was replaced by someone focused entirely on defending the farm's new legal structure. Caryn remained largely absent from public view, her role in the business downplayed, though the legal filings made her involvement impossible to ignore. Outside the courtroom, the farm itself became a symbol of what was at stake. Visitors, fans, and employees noticed the tension. Operations continued, but the warmth that had defined the family's approach to the farm was strained. Seasonal events went on, but behind the scenes, the atmosphere had shifted. The farm was still profitable, still successful, but it no longer felt like the shared dream it once had been. During this time, Amy and Zach also began reaching out to former employees and contractors, gathering testimony about how the farm had been managed in recent years. Some shared stories about payments being delayed, unusual transfers, and decisions made without proper authorization. Each account added context and weight to the case. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. The farm's business had been run in a way that prioritized control over family, secrecy over transparency. The emotional toll on Amy was immense. Nights were long, filled with worry and reflection. She thought about the early years of the farm, the excitement of building something from nothing, and the joy of sharing it with her children. The betrayal stung not just because of financial loss, but because the family she had trusted had been deliberately excluded. Memories of holidays, harvests, and family events clashed with the reality of legal disputes and courtroom battles. Yet, amid the pain, her resolve strengthened. Zach, too, felt the personal weight of the betrayal. For him, the farm represented more than property. It was identity, history, and future. Watching decisions being made without him or his mother was painful, but he channeled that pain into action. He became meticulous in reviewing documents, attentive in court, and precise in coordinating with legal counsel. The goal was clear: protect the farm, honor his family's legacy, and ensure that the mistakes of the past could not continue to harm the next generation. As the legal process unfolded, small victories began to emerge. Certain financial documents that had been hidden were recovered. Witnesses corroborated key details. Timelines of ownership transfers were clarified. Every piece of evidence strengthened Amy and Zach's case, gradually undermining the narrative presented by Matt's team. The courtroom became a place not just for legal arguments, but for the truth to be recorded, verified, and recognized. Public interest continued to rise. Fans and media outlets dissected court filings, speculated on outcomes, and followed updates closely. While the attention added pressure, it also reinforced the importance of the case. This was no longer a private dispute. It had become